just before we came on camera, I remember you said that Nigeria is built on what is called a bad idea. Do you think we're still along the trajectory of that bad idea?
Systems are built with purposes in mind, and purposes are almost always found on ideas. The idea of Nigeria is a very, very bad idea. The idea that undergirds this country, that informed the design of the entire superstructure of governance, is a very bad idea. Nigeria is not found on the idea of citizenship. It is found on the idea of feudalism, the acceptable non-equality of persons who live within the same geographical space. That is why the law does not rule in Nigeria, because it cannot apply to all equally. That is the bad idea that rules Nigeria, that is ruining it. Nigeria is found on the bad idea of feudalism.
So how do we correct this bad idea, or is it a case of the nation is doomed for failure? Because some people will call you a messenger of doom if you say we're doomed. Are we doomed?
The one thing about the truth is that it has very little respect for the opinions of those to whom it is delivered. What they do with it is entirely up to them. All I have pointed out is the fact that the way we are, our current trajectories, will not deliver anything positive. That is not a message of doom. It is a message demanding that we find redirection and then correct the error that has been pointed out. The antidote to feudalism is citizenship. If we elect to construct a country found on citizenship, we would have successfully walked away from the madness that has overtaken us. So it's not like we are in a situation where doom is unavoidable. What is making it seemingly unavoidable is the refusal of the Nigerian ruling class to address the problem that has been identified. The belief that they can continue on this unsustainable trajectory and deliver something sustainable. That is why it seems like it's gloom and doom. All Nigeria has to do is yoke the country to the rule of law. If you yoke the country to the rule of law, where the courts become effective, the constitution, as imperfect as it is, begins to reign supreme, we would have begun our journey to sanity. But we cannot continue our current trajectories and then expect that something positive will come out of what is manifestly evil. That is why it might seem like it's gloom and doom. It will be gloom and doom if we do not change.
So how do we begin to change? Because where we are now, some people said, oh, the economy is better than what it used to be. And I asked them the question, the economy as it relates to the macroeconomics, where some statistics are being said to look good, and some accountants or political economists said the numbers are massaged, but whether it's massaged or not, they still seem good. But that's macroeconomics. The man on the street doesn't do macroeconomics because that's not his business. He's only interested in what he eats today and how he takes care of his children and how he will ensure his wife will not die just because of malaria. That's not macroeconomics. That's simple, basic economy. Your thoughts?
I think the greatest error we all make, especially when we are considering Nigeria, is that we assume that the operators of the Nigerian system are unaware of the truth of what they are doing. So we measure what they have done and we say, oh, they failed in this place or they failed in that place. They have not failed. The system is working exactly as it is designed to work. When they point to those figures and they tell you about how well the economy is doing, they are completely correct, because what they want to achieve is exactly what they are achieving, the impoverishment of the Nigerian mass. When a people have been rendered completely impoverished, it becomes easy to be donating rice to them as the cure and elixir for all of their problems. So if the people will talk about insecurity, you give them one bag of rice. They will talk about bad road, you give them one bag of rice. They talk about bad healthcare system, you give them one bag of rice. We talk about all the children who are out of school, you give them another bag of rice. Rice has become the currency and elixir to every Nigerian problem. That is because the system as operated is designed to ensure the full feudalization of the country. And that can only happen when the people are sufficiently impoverished, sufficiently made ignorant. So when you talk about macroeconomics and you then begin to refer to the micro level, where the man on the street, who knows how many meals he's able to afford in a month, who knows that he's living in a place that is unfit for human habitation. A man you are paying, you say it's 70,000 naira, that is your minimum wage. The reality is that if that man ignores to file his tax return, the fine is 100,000 naira. A bag of rice will take away more than half of his salary. So you have deliberately pauperized him. It's not as if you don't know what you're doing. Those are deliberate choices. The same government and country that can afford to keep lawmakers in luxury, governors living like pashas, the same country that can choose to build roads without tenders, that can choose to just throw money around like drunken sailor, is ensuring that the opportunity for the people to enrich themselves have been shut down, and the process of impoverishment has been weaponized for all. So those numbers And the interpretation that persons in government are giving to it, I think we should take it as their own measurement of the economy. And then we should then take the time to be honest enough with ourselves. Are the people truly better off today, or are the people deeper in poverty? Their own figures will suggest we have over 140 million Nigerians living in multi-dimensional poverty, and they are clapping for themselves about a good economy.
Okay, so let me then look at it from this perspective. You have described our elections as a hollow ritual at some point.
And once upon a time, you had the hollow rituals. Now you are not even going to have any hollow rituals. Don't worry.
Oh, so it's not going to be. What would we be expecting to have
What
come
can you possibly
2027?
expect? What can you possibly expect? Reality is, you and I have sat in this studio, I believe it was over 2 years ago, closer to 3 years ago, and I told you categorically at the time that there will be no election in 2027. And there is nothing that has happened to suggest that I was off tangent. Everything that has happened up until this point, since 2023, confirmed what I told you at that time. And it wasn't like I was gazing at some crystal ball. All I had to do was look at what happened in 2023. Persons who had no business, even in the elections, not just when you focus on the presidency, you lose sight of the emergence of people like Akpabio, who emerged in the Senate in spite of the fact that they were not even qualified to run. They were expressly disqualified by provisions of the Electoral Act. Akpabio, Lawan, but they ended up in the Senate, and the courts endorsed it. So you had a situation where our judicial system has become an instrument for working from the question, from the answer to the question. So they do it first, and then they find a way for the judiciary to ratify what is already done. So the judiciary is no longer there to adjudicate based on law and equity. It is there to rationalize what has been done that should never be done. All of a sudden, we don't know the meaning of hand any longer. There are multiple things that have established the complicity of the judiciary in the mess that we found ourselves in. So it's, when you're not talking about election in 2027, you're dealing with a situation where the INEC, the judiciary, everybody is working to ensure seamlessly that there are no viable platforms for anyone to contest elections.
So how do we have a democracy that...
We've never had a democracy. We've only ever had a performative shadow of a democracy. And whatever performative shadows we once had were effectively destroyed in 2023. That was the last pretense at an election.
So you have said the Nigerians are not citizens. And
how can you have citizens in a place not ruled by law?
So if you don't have citizens and you don't have democracy, and your view is that there is no election, it used to be hollow, but now there's not even going to be an election. Again, it brings us down to this point where we say, are we in a situation where we're doomed for failure?
No. See, every nation in the world today once found itself pretty much where we are. That's the point where human beings would have to ask themselves if they still retain the capacity to evolve and find solutions to their existential problems. The existential problem of the Nigerian today is the governance system in Nigeria. The idea of feudalism that denies equality and citizenship to the Nigerian and renders it impossible to have a society governed by law. That is the challenge of the Nigerian, whether they are young or old. We must all recognize the fact that the absence of the rule of law has guaranteed that things will remain where it is the whim of men, not the mere whims of puny men who do not even have the imagination to evolve a better country. Those will be what will continue to rule us until we evolve a system that is anchored to the law. Having identified that, we must now ask ourselves, why has it proven so difficult to evolve such a society, and why has this evil endured for as long as it has endured and would appear to have even been strengthened? Reality is that it is our many divisions, our readiness to be divided on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of religion, on the basis of even sectarian differences within the same religion, our readiness to be divided by all of those makes it difficult for us to realize the many things that unite us. There is already a commonality of the afflictions. Whatever amount I'm paying for petrol in Lagos is what they will pay in Kaduna. Maybe they will even pay more. In Newi, all of us are in the same pot. People are finding reasons to tolerate the evil because they find solidarity with parts of the same class that is afflicting all of us. They will remind us of ethnic differences. But when it comes to that place where you see the beneficiaries, nobody is asking the ethnicity of the next man. If you want to see how laughable it is, look at their city boy movement. Some of the biggest Igbo boys, they are the prime movers of city boy movement. And then one idiot, Mukaila in Ajegunle, who has barely had a meal to eat today, will be abusing Chinedu. Chinedu will be abusing Adekunle. But the reality is that when it comes to the beneficiaries, nobody is checking their ethnic identity or their religious identities for that matter. So it is when Nigerians come to the understanding of the fact that they need to find common purpose. If your afflictions are the same, why is it so difficult to find common purpose to resolve the problems? Education is comatose in the north, west, south, east, everywhere. The healthcare system is the same, collapsed. Security is the same, collapsed. There is nothing for the common man, regardless of where he is from. One of the most afflicted parts of Nigeria when it comes to insecurity today is Katsina. That was Buhari's home. Now it's become a wasteland of banditry simply because compromises were made. So the man in Katsina is suffering the same banditry that the man in Kwara, in Ogun State, in even Oyo State, everywhere. We are all suffering from the same things, but we are failing to evolve common solutions to common problems.
Okay, before we wrap up this segment, let me bring this to a point where I'm asking, is our problem a systemic problem or something to do with leadership? Because they said, what I've heard consistently from so many other people is that if we have the right leaders, the systems will change, solutions will come. But others are saying if we have a system, whoever emerges as leader, they follow the system. So chicken and egg, help me.
It's the system. It is always the system. If it isn't for the system, how come the good governor is the outlier? You have 36 state governors. The only one we talk about when you want to talk about good governance, we all know who that one is. But the minute he leaves that office, nobody is bound to replicate what he had done. Peter Obi was the measure of good governance. He left more than 10 years ago. He's been like 16 years now that he's been out of power. The people who have followed him, have they built on what he did? So you can, by sheer force of your personality, make a difference. But as long as that system that is unmoored to law, that allows the person occupying the office to do as he pleases, as long as that system is sustained, you cannot have good governance. You can have the occasional totem of good governance here, and there are persons who, based on their own conscience, decide to do better. But that is all you have. If they elect not to do the same, if they just want to be like every other person and be swallowing the money and ignoring the people, they will do it and nothing will happen. A place that is unyoked to law, a system that is built with impunity in mind, is not capable of delivering anything sustainable. So it's the system you need to fix. If the system will hold people accountable, if governors know that the people's vote would count and they need to deliver on their campaign promises, they will do better.
Are you advocating rebellion?
I have been advocating a revolution in Nigeria for over 15 years. I'm not talking about a armed insurrection where people are carrying guns, running riot on the street, but it is surely critically clear to every sentient being who can still think that our current trajectories are not sustainable. Definitely not sustainable. But the beneficiaries of this system have equally shown very clearly that they have no interest whatsoever in changing this system because it works for them. But it is also the duty of those for whom the system does not work. It is their duty to look beyond their multiple contrived divisions to find common purpose. If we can find common purpose, how many are the people holding us down? How many are we? If we all spoke to ourselves across the divides and we decided that, okay, let's pass a message to the ruiners of this country. Okay, on Tuesday next week, let everybody sit at home. If you went on the street in protest, NSAS has already shown us what the system is capable of doing. There is no point in being silly and then encouraging people to come to the street when we already know that the system is happy to deploy soldiers, murder however many numbers, and completely deny the existence of such killings. So why would I then encourage anyone to go onto the street? But spend the time to educate yourselves. Look, this is the way this thing is going. It's not sustainable. Let us all agree to send a message to our rulers. On Tuesday, sit down at home. If I'm not on the street, who are you going to shoot? If I'm not burning tires, who are you going to accuse of destroying anything?
But the IPOP tried that.
Let's get something clear. IPOP tried it and it was very, very effective. Because if it wasn't effective, you will not have Soludo demanding that people open their store, or there will be legal consequences to staying at home. The question is, have Nigerians tried it? IPOP tried it, it was effective. I'm not speaking to the mode of enforcement and the way other actors came into their game and turned the whole thing into a bloody spectacle. But I do know that before there was IPOP sit-at-home, there were sit-at-homes in 94, 95 in this same Lagos and Nigeria during the years of the pro-democracy struggle. I was part and parcel of that. I was in the student union in those days. And I know that we took part at multiple levels. There are alternative forms of protest other than going on the street. What our people do not want to do is the legwork required to go and talk to the market woman whom the APC and other political organizations have systematically co-opted into the instrument of their own oppression. We have a duty to go and talk to them. We can't be speaking over their heads and demanding that they sit at home when we've not explained the reasons to them. Those are the kind of hard work that a lot of rights activists are afraid of taking on, that makes it unattractive for them to talk about sit at home, and they rather come to the street. All you need to block a street, maybe 10 people. You come on the street, so that would appear to be more effective. But the reality is it's not sustainable. we have to find other ways that do not present the people as sitting dogs to a system that has proven itself manifestly murderous. That would be irresponsible.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We've been speaking with Dele Farotimi on the foundations of Nigeria's democracy. After the break, we're going to be asking an important question. Are Nigeria's institutions already compromised ahead of 2027? We see what has happened with the ADC, and a lot of people said there is no democracy and there is no diversity in our political structure at the moment. Do stay with us. The conversation continues after this break.
Across Nigeria's 774 local government areas, promises were made, but how many have been kept? From the village chiefdoms to council secretariats, a new conversation is unfolding. One that's powered by people, driven by data, and unwilling to accept
this
silence.
particular government, they are not doing anything.
Is your council fixing roads or just building press statements? Are your taxes buying change? Welcome to Scorecard. We trace the allocations, we track the outcome, and we talk to the people who live through them. From abandoned projects to overlooked triumphs, this is Reported with Purpose. Every Sunday at 7:30 p.m., Scorecard pulls back the curtain on grassroots governance. Because democracy doesn't stop in Abuja, it starts at your doorstep. Scorecard, only on News Central.
Welcome back to 60 Minutes with Mr. K. We're still in conversation with Dele Farotimi, a man whose views on Nigeria's democracy continue to stir national debate. So let's continue the conversation. You recently said in the tweet you made on April 1, and I quote, let me read it. The opposition are preparing for an election. INEC, the judiciary, and Tinubu are prepping for a coronation. What exactly do you mean by that?
Exactly what I said. The opposition will tell you they are preparing for an election in 2027. But you can only have elections where the will of the people reigns supreme. In a place where the will of the people counts for little, where everything would eventually come down to whatever INEC says it is, and whatever the judiciary will tolerate, there is very little hope of any substantive change coming out of that kind of process, especially if one takes the benefit of the lessons of our recent history. The chairman of an INEC that promised high rev, beavers, promised real-time results being available to all, declared in the middle of the night, go to court, after declaring the winner of an election where he can't even produce a credible result. He simply said go to court, and when the people went to court, we all knew exactly what happened. And then in the lead up to the tweet that you've referenced, the shenanigans in the ADC had just started. And then I was just laughing because it wasn't a surprise. The one thing I know this government would not want is a platform from where any credible candidate can emerge to challenge the president in the coming election. So I know that whatever they are working from the answer to the question. The answer is there mustn't be a credible candidate on the ballot. However that will be achieved, whether judgment will be procured, whether INEC will turn the constitution and law on his head, it wouldn't matter.
So are you making the INEC and the judiciary complicit?
They are complicit. That's not, it's not a conspiracy.
Then what is it?
It's just a statement of fact. There is nothing independent about INEC, and there is certainly no hope in our judiciary. Those are statements of fact.
But some lawyers will tell you that Nigerian judiciary is not completely
you say what? It's not completely
bad.
But it's
there are bad eggs.
Oh, bad eggs.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. If you brought out 10 justices and only 2, even if it's only 1 that is bad out of the 10, you're already talking about a terrible judiciary. But I assure you that perhaps...
no saints anywhere. You don't have
No. You don't need to have saints to build a country. You can have crooks. As long as the law rules and everybody is obliged to follow the law, as long as the rules are clear and is not subjective, they are not subjective or subject to the whims of men. As long as these are there, then there is no problem. Where the problem emerges is when there aren't adherence to rules, where you do not have the rule of law, where the whims and caprices of men rule over law. And that is where we are. So it's not about a conspiracy theory. It's about a situation where we have an INEC that is not yoked to law. It can declare whatever it cares to declare. It doesn't have to follow its own rules and guidelines. That has been established. We were told up until the day of the presidential election that beavers would work, it would upload to IREF, and then we had a glitch. Nobody can talk about what the glitch is up until today. And all of a sudden, subsidiary legislations made pursuant to the powers of INEC under the Electoral Act were no longer binding INEC. It didn't matter again, and even the court upheld that. So what kind of fool would I have to be before I would hypnotize myself into believing that we have a credible electoral system, a system that has been rendered deliberately impotent by the operator. We have more than sufficient laws.
So are you saying that you have no hope with regards to INEC as it is structured, and despite the change in leadership,
let me say
the new INEC chairman?
The new INEC chairman is the old INEC chairman. It's always about a system where the president, who is interested in the election, is the sole appointer of all the persons in INEC. How are you even expecting to find anything good coming out of that place? How? I would have to self-hypnotize myself before I buy into the delusion that I'm Mupiton, even especially with his ADC shenanigans. How am I going to be so foolish as to, even if the man had any good intention, if he had good intentions, he wouldn't even be in that office in the first place. There is no way he would have been sat in that office if his intentions were good. The persons who appointed him do not have good intentions. If they had good intentions, they would admit to the fraud of 2023, re-establish the confidence of the electorate in the process, and then maybe someone like me will be like, okay, now they've corrected their error, they've admitted to it, they are promising that beavers will work, everything will go on IREF. Then I would have seen improvement in the elections held after 2023. But all the elections held after 2023 further strengthens my faith in my conviction that we can't have free and fair election.
So I've listened to politicians say that a lot of times they claim that election results are written. And in this case now, we have seen a dwindling and reduction in the number of people coming out to vote. The last election shows that number, because people had very high hopes and expectation with the emergence of Peter Obi at that point in time, it seemed like we had a resurgence. But since then, all the other by-elections indicate that...
Because the people realized, after what happened in 2023, that their votes do not count in the eye of this system. This system is designed to discount their vote. So they found no reason to engage in the farcical gyrations of elections any longer. If my vote does not count, what's the point? So I actually believe that the flaw or the fault lies with the political class. Those who desire change in Nigeria need to move beyond finding alliances with fellow politicians. The job of explaining what is at stake must move to the people. They should go and find alliances with the people. If the people are invested in the system in sufficient numbers, INEC and the judiciary will be afraid to rewrite the results. But a citizenry that is not engaged, is not militant in the protection of its votes, would have situations where INEC will write whatever it cares, and then the judiciary will ratify whatever has been given to them.
In very short term, very quick answer, let me ask you this. Would you count yourself as one of the obedients?
The obedient movement existed before there was a Peter Obi. It's a tendency. Peter Obi is the beneficiary of that movement because of his own personality. So there is a latent demand within the populace, especially the young and the people who still retain the capacity to aspire to better. There is a latent demand for a different direction. That demand was there before NSAS. NSAS showed them that it wasn't going to happen on the street. People like me convinced them that we could get it through the ballot. So we started registering people for election before there was a Peter Obi. Voters registration had commenced as early as 2021, 2020. In the immediate aftermath of NSAS, we started encouraging people to take part in the process. That came in tandem with the promises that Yahoo Mahmoud was making to the people. That he was telling us IREF will work, beavers will work. We believed that the process would deliver change. So we invested in voters' education, getting the people to register to vote. And that was what Peter Obi layered on by the time he emerged. So yes, I consider myself a member of the obedient movement, but it is not about a person. Peter Obi is merely a beneficiary of what had existed before his emergence as a candidate in 2023.
So that takes me to the point where I will then ask you this question. You're a member or a part of the body of people called the obedient movement, and you're very keen on seeing the person that personifies that movement in the person of Peter Obi emerging as the candidate of a political party in the hope that he can begin to help to activate or actualize the changes that you want to see going forward in Nigeria. But all of what you have said in the recent time point to the fact that 2027 election is a fait accompli. Nothing is going to change.
You see,
so how do you expect him, even if he becomes the candidate of any party, the system is built to ensure he fails?
There is a nuance to my membership of the obedient. There is a nuance. My consciousness predates the obedient movement, and I don't predicate my membership on a person. My membership of that collective is predicated on the ideas, the idea of progressive governance. That is the predicate. That Peter Obi became the totem is a different ball game entirely. Now, I am of the opinion that instead of finding alliances with politicians, the alliance should have been found with the people. In the immediate aftermath of 2023, after the collapse of the court case and the judiciary was done with whatever it had done, I was of the opinion, and I still remain of the opinion, that instead of finding alliances with politicians, we should move from emotions, sentiment. Oh, Peter is a good person, he has good character. That's his person. What are the ideas behind which we now mobilize the people? My opinion is that that is where the alliance should be. Now, when you talk about the fait accompli that 2027 is, that would only happen if we are merely focused on the person of Peter Obi, even if he gets the ticket. If he gets the ticket and you are focused solely on Peter Obi as a person, we will lose. Because the system would go ahead and announce whatever it cares to announce, just as it did in 2023, and there will be nothing to do about it. But if we move from person to substantive ideas, when the average man on the street knows what a Peter Obi victory would mean in the area of education, health, infrastructure, security, and all the many things that are plaguing him, when he knows what the issues are, it moves beyond Peter Obi. Peter Obi is only one man. You sit down in the presidency, if the Senate is compromised, what can he achieve? If the House of Reps is compromised, what can he achieve? If the governors are compromised, what can he possibly do? So the person must be separated from the ideas. It is the ideas that you can use to substantively motivate the people into becoming militant about their electoral rights. So my membership of the Obedient or any other organization for that matter, and I belong to a few, including Afenifere. So my own is very clear. I believe in progressive politics, but I also believe very clearly that you cannot work with this system. You have to bring an alternative that galvanizes the people to desire an end to this system. If they don't, the system will just reinvent itself.
You heard what happened with INEC not recognizing the leadership of David Mark and that of Obene Ralph Aregbesola as the leaders of ADC, despite all the things that they believe they have done. Do you think there's anywhere in law or in morality that can be used to justify the action of INEC?
I'm sure INEC will find multiple laws by which to justify what they have done. Whether equity will back them or whether history and posterity will side with them is another ballgame entirely. But when it comes to finding justification, we are pretty good at that in Nigeria. If we can't find something in law, we'll find something in technicality. There is always a way to explain any madness. So that's why we are where we are.
They'll consider the action as madness?
It's madness. What's the point? In a democracy, you are busy working to exclude persons from participation. That's madness. That's not democracy. But then, I never believed that we are a democracy, so I can't claim that I'm surprised in any way. In fact, the surprise is that it took so long before they finally found a way to exclude them. I'm not surprised. If you remember, the Labour Party and Abure, and then you had Apampa, all kind of goony-goo-goos were flying around in the Labour Party. But the moment Peter Obi left the Labour Party, all is well on the Western Front. Labour Party is now a haven of peace. Abi? So Peter Obi went into ADC, and all of a sudden, in fact, you'll find that Onanuga is the one that is busy promoting ADC's new chairman. So it's infra-dig, if the truth be told. It's not something that you shouldn't find an electoral umpire playing the kind of role that INEC has played in that shenanigan, but it's no surprise.
So quite a few analysts have said that it looks like we're tilting or moving towards the one-party states. And I had an interview recently with two of the spokespeople of the federal government in Sunday Dare and Daniel Buhala. I had a conversation with them and they said, no, this is a one-party domination, not a one-party state. So what's the difference for you?
Potato. And for me, it's actually a welcome development. A lot of people will look at this and they are alarmed. I'm happy. I'm very happy that they have finally shown Nigerians that regardless of their multiple differences, religious, sectarian, ethnic, there are no differences amongst the ruiners of Nigeria. Right there in Jos, I heard it with my own ears. Persons who came from the ethnicities that have just been decimated, that has been experiencing genocidal attacks for decades, were saying that the latest attack was calculated to embarrass the president. They reduced the sufferings of their own people. They reduced it to political expediency. So when I see things like that, and all of them are now in the same party, it makes it easier to explain to the idiots, pardon my French, who had believed that they were solidarizing with this person because it's their brother. They can now see very clearly that brotherhood counts for nothing when it comes to the game of power in Nigeria. The Game of Thrones in Nigeria does not care for ethnic affiliation, religious affiliation. It's about interest. And the victims have been the last to come to the knowledge of this. My first book, I said, do not die in their war. That was when they were fighting. They are done with their fights. Regardless of what their former political beliefs might be, they've become one. The political syncretism that produced the APC sustains it. And it has assured that whatever any other politician might be looking for in the other parties that they had before, which were never ideological, can be accommodated within the ranks of the APC. And when you now juxtapose that with the readiness of the APC to weaponize power, join us and your sins are forgiven. The national chairman at the time, Oshiomole, said so to everybody's hearing. If you cannot endure the pain of rigging, do not join politics. That man provided 2 Freudian sleep that should have sufficiently warned everybody about the system that we are running. Join the APC and you are fine. And that's why you are seeing the governors falling over themselves to go into the APC.
Where do we begin to take responsibility as a people and say, we have to change the system? Remember that during Buhari's first term, the mantra or the message was change, change, change. They wanted change. And
but we didn't ask what kind of change. We've had change. We truly have change.
Bought into that change.
But they've brought change.
So what change do we need and how do we make it happen?
Those are the questions we failed to ask in 2014, 2015. Buhari was promising change and the people nobody bothered to interrogate the agenda for change. But he has brought change. So we really cannot claim that they did not deliver on the promise of change. Nigeria no longer has a problem of corruption.
Renewed hope as well now.
No. We are the one who didn't finish it. Renewed hope. We stopped there. But the reality is that there was no hope to renew. So it was renewed hopelessness. I remember saying in 2022, 2023, that unless whoever comes after Buhari reimagines Nigeria and then sells that vision of a new Nigeria to the people, that person will be an undertaker. I called Tinubu and Atiku at the time. I said they were the horsemen of the apocalypse. Are we not facing the apocalypse today? It's renewed hopelessness because Buhari had done a fantastic job of killing Nigeria before this government came. If that multiple persons in the current government were functionaries and enablers of the last government does not change the fact that Buhari had already destroyed Nigeria substantially. He had destroyed every illusion of a Nigerian nation. His prebenda politics, his capacity for bringing Fulani people to the exclusion of others had already destroyed the solidarity or every illusion of a united country. But this one came and renewed the hopelessness. And he has now visited it anew on top of everybody. So it's not a situation where they have failed to deliver. They have delivered exactly what was promised. We were the ones who did not interrogate the agenda. Change. What is the change going to be? We didn't ask. So the change we now have, we should manage it until we are ready to remove that change.
So those who are saying you want to create a change, join the game, get into politics, and you can change it only from within.
You can get into politics, all right, but not just this fraudulent politics. Politics means you are getting involved with how you are ruled. Politics means you are organizing yourselves. What I'm suggesting is politics. You find collectives, whether it's your street union.
But you have chosen to use the word rebellion a few times.
Yes, but even in rebellion, you must play politics. Rebellion is about politics. You can't have a revolution if you cannot build coalitions. You cannot build coalitions if you are not able to play politics. I'm a member of Afenifere. It's part of the politics that I play. Afenifere is a political party. I am there. I am also here speaking to persons who will not be heard if I was sat only in Afenifere. I speak to multiple persons, but only with one goal in mind, a different direction for my country. So everywhere you find like-minded persons who are not even completely agreed with you, there are some areas where they would agree with you and you would have areas of disagreement. If it's politics, you have to learn to lean backward as long as you are not compromising your core principles. You would have to learn to accommodate other people's position. You don't get to win everything.
So when some people say that they cannot find the young people that can build a cart, in a manner of speaking, the young people that can mobilize, galvanize, drive, and push their peers to aim towards what you describe as political rebellion without violence that helps to reconstitute and reshape the dynamics and the system. If they can't find such people, where do we go, Mars or Venus?
Intellectual indolence leads our people to give up too easily sometimes. They expect Voltrons to come and solve the problems.
From Venus, Mars, and
it's not going to happen.
Okay.
The Voltrons await us in our mirrors. We are the ones who would have to find the grace to become. The other day somebody was telling me, would we ever have another Ghani? I said, the society that produced Ghani, is that society still there? The student union leaders who supported Ghani, like myself did in my own time, are they there? The priests who spoke truth to power, like Olubunmi Okogie back then, are they still there? Journalists like Ononuga, who is today excusing evil, are they there? How many news magazines are still in existence in Nigeria? The society that produced these persons is dead. So when you now look at today's youth and you expect them to rise above their society, you must also take into cognizance the multiple institutional challenges that has been kept in place to make it near impossible for them to achieve these things. You're dealing with a society that has had ignorance weaponized against it to the point where they are happy to fight and die in the enemies of their oppressors rather than to join hands with those looking to liberate them. Those are the odds that today's youth are having to struggle with. That now imposes a duty on those of us who I termed the Moses generation. We saw a country that functioned. We have a duty to let these children know that Nigeria was once better than this, and it retains the capacity and potential to be much better than it is. And to then point them in the right direction. Go this way. If you will go like this, you will get to that point. We have a duty to do that, because if we left them to their own devices, you must understand that when a country has been deliberately robbed of its heroes, because where have you seen any hero celebrated in Nigeria? Stella Adadevo, who stopped Ebola, what have they done to immortalize her? No. Humphrey Nwosu, who supervised the most free and fair election in this country, what have they done to immortalize him? It's a country that deliberately defaces its heroes so that the youth have nothing to aspire to except the debauchery that is displayed on a national level. So how do you propel such youth if you left them to their own devices? So those of us who saw a better country, who know better, we have a duty to speak, we have a duty to lead, we have a duty to inspire them to better. We cannot afford to find some peace with our own conscience confronted with the evil that we are seeing. So if the youth must rise, it will be because we also rose. We moved out of our comfort zones, we refuse to be complicit, and we stop being complacent.
Okay. So final word then on the issue of insecurity in Nigeria. We see a situation where the numbers are increasing, and some political players are saying that this is the season of politics and this is the season where this kind of insurgency, banditry and so on happen. What do you say to them? Are they right? And is this a political game that they play with the lives of Nigerians?
In the first place, I think that statement opens a window into their mind. They are being ruled by cretins, cretinous idiots who have no idea of what governance entails. The first duty of the state is the protection of the lives and properties of the citizens. That Nigerians have become victims of Nigeria is no longer debatable, but that these cretins will come into the public space and be making such horrible excuses and explanations in pursuit of normalization of madness is suggestive of a people who have taken complete leave of their senses. In the first place, since when do we accept the mother of our people at any season or time of the year? That's one. But that they are now suggesting that this is just, there is an upside only because it's election season. It tells you how simple they are in their minds. There has been no let up in the killing of Nigerians in the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It's been constant. There is nothing new.
It has increased.
It has increased because the state has become increasingly incapable of fulfilling its obligation. In recent times, we've had soldiers coming into the media to talk about their condition of service. A private soldier is talking about buying his own uniform. He's paid 70,000 naira, or this is 74,000 that the guy said he was on the honest bond. He's paid 74 or so. He's buying uniform for 50,000. The guy is meant to serve only a tour of 2 years. He's on his 5th year. Those are the persons who are meant to protect the lives and properties of Nigeria. You give them guns that are jamming. The terrorists facing them are carrying very sophisticated weaponry. You are voting incredible sums every year for the military, but we don't see it reflected in their welfare or in their machinery or equipment. And it will get progressively worse because more and more persons are deserting. If more and more soldiers are deserting, those who are killed are not being replaced because nobody wants to go into the military. Why would anybody want to go to the military to be earning 70,000 naira a month and be buying their own uniforms? And if you visit their barracks, you'll be disgusted by the condition in which they are forced to exist.